Once upon a time, there was a man who thought he was helping, but ended up making the biggest mistake of his life. This is the story of Uzzah, the man who reached out to steady the ark of God and paid the price for it. But before that moment, before the stumble, before the shout, before the silence, there was a night, a still night. Uzzah sat on the edge of the cart, legs swinging, watching stars glitter above the trees. The oxen beside him chewed lazily, their breath warm in the cool air. And behind him, so close he could hear it humming, was the Ark of the Covenant. It rested on wood, holy gold on rough timber. He never looked at it long. Even now he turned his face away, his eyes landing on the shadows in the grass instead. "We move it in the morning," he said aloud, "straight to Jerusalem. King David will dance, trumpets will blast. And me?" He smiled weakly. "I'll be the guy making sure it doesn't fall off the cart." A breeze swept across the plain, rattling the cart's sides, and suddenly, like a drop of cold water sliding down his spine, he remembered. He closed his eyes, and the memory came rushing in like a tide. He was 6 years old again. The ark wasn't on a cart then. It was in his father's house, Abinadab's house, where it had sat for 20 years. It had come after tragedy, after war, after the Philistines were cursed and terrified and just wanted it gone. They placed it on a new cart and let it roll away, and it stopped in his family's front yard. He remembered his father's voice that night, strong, trembling. "Boys," Abinadab had said, "this is no ordinary box. It carries the presence of God. You don't look inside. You don't touch it. Ever. Dot." Uzzah had nodded, wide-eyed. So had his brother Ahio. "But why?" Uzzah had asked. "What if it falls?" "It won't," his father said. "But if it does, let God be the one to lift it." Now grown, Uzzah opened his eyes. That warning still echoed inside him. But so did the years, the waiting, the watching. He had protected the ark like it was part of his own family. He had walked past it every day, cleaned around it, whispered near it. He had never touched it. But he had come close. He looked down at his hands, calloused, strong, capable. He whispered, "I'm not a boy anymore, Father. I can help now." The stars twinkled in silence. Somewhere in the grass, a cricket chirped. And behind him, the ark continued to glow softly beneath the night sky. The sun cracked open the horizon like a golden egg. By the time the dew dried, the plain was alive. Drums rumbled low like thunder beneath the feet. Flutes curled through the air like birdsong. Tambourines shimmered in the light, and the singers, dozens of them, warmed their voices like warriors sharpening swords. It was the day King David had been waiting for. The day the Ark of God would be carried to Jerusalem, not dragged, not hidden, escorted. Uzzah stood beside the cart as the oxen were led forward, their yokes polished with oil. His brother Ahio took the lead, holding the reins. Uzzah stayed by the cart's side, close enough to feel the hum of the ark through the wheels. The music swelled. Trumpets shot through the sky like lightning. Dancers spun like flames in front of the cart. David himself, the king, was leaping with joy, his royal robes flapping, his hands lifted to heaven. But Uzzah, he didn't dance. He watched. He listened. He walked with the cart, eyes sharp, hand never far from the side. Every wheel turn made his heart skip. Every jolt in the road made his fingers twitch. "Why the cart?" he whispered to himself. The law had said the ark should be carried on poles by priests, but King David had chosen a cart. A brand new one, sure, strong, well built, but still a cart. Uzzah's father had told him once, just because something works doesn't mean it's right. He didn't say that to the king. He didn't say it to anyone. He just stayed close enough to catch it if it fell. The parade moved through valleys and hills. Children ran alongside it laughing. Elders clapped. Some cried. "Look at Uzzah," one woman said. "He's walking right beside the ark." "That's Abinadab's son," whispered another. "He's watched over it since he was a boy." They smiled at him. But Uzzah didn't smile back. The path ahead was turning rocky. He could feel the tension in the oxen, snorting, shifting. The cart wobbled slightly over a jagged root. Uzzah placed a steadying hand on the frame, but not on the ark. Not yet. Ahio glanced back. "Still with me, brother?" "Always," Uzzah called, voice tight. Then the drums beat faster, the music surged, and the people cheered. The cart rolled on. But behind the songs and joy, Uzzah's ears tuned in to something else, a sound only he seemed to hear. The creak of wood under weight, the breathing of oxen growing ragged, and the faintest trembling in the wheels. Something wasn't right, and he was the only one who felt it. The road narrowed. Trees leaned over the path like curious watchers. Shadows danced between the leaves as the sun shifted overhead. The music didn't stop, but it thinned, like even the instruments sensed something drawing near. Uzzah tightened his jaw. They were entering Nacon's threshing floor, a place where oxen sometimes slipped, a wide, flat spot where grain was crushed and the ground was scattered with uneven stone. He knew this place. He had walked it 1,000 times as a boy. But now the cart creaked louder, the oxen let out low, grumbling moans, and then bump! The left wheel jolted. The whole cart shook, the ark rocked. Gasps rippled from the crowd. "Whoa!" Ahio shouted, pulling hard on the reins. One of the oxen's knees buckled. The cart tilted. The ark began to slide. And before Uzzah could even think, his hand moved. Not slowly, not with a plan, just instinct. Catch it. His fingers gripped the side of the ark. The gold was warm, hot, even. His hand was on it. His hand was on it. His heart stopped. And so did the world. The music halted mid-note. Voices choked. The birds silenced. Time itself seemed to freeze, as if heaven was holding its breath. And then a sound like a crack of lightning with no storm. A flash, not white, but gold. A burst of light that exploded from the ark and swallowed Uzzah whole. He didn't cry out. He didn't stumble back. He just dropped, as if heaven had reached down and said, "That is enough." The ground was quiet. So quiet, it hurt. Ahio fell to his knees beside him. "Uzzah?" he whispered. But Uzzah didn't move. David's voice rang out, sharp, confused, trembling. "What happened?" No one answered. The people stood frozen. The dancers had stopped mid-twirl. The trumpets hung at their sides. The joy had been drained out of the air like the color from a painting. And there, beside the cart, lay the man who thought he was helping. The man who steadied what should never have been touched. There was no thunder, no voice from the clouds, no angel with a flaming sword, just Uzzah's body lying still beside the cart. One hand stretched toward the ark, one eye slightly open, his face calm, almost peaceful, as if he had fallen asleep in the middle of trying to protect what he loved. Ahio's voice broke the stillness. "Uzzah, get up! Come on, brother!" He shook his shoulder. Nothing. David dismounted from his chariot and pushed through the crowd. He stopped when he saw the body, his jaw clenched, his hands curled into fists. "Why?" David whispered, his voice cracking. "He meant no harm." He spun toward the ark but didn't get close. Instead, he backed away, slowly, cautiously. "We can't move it," he said. "Not now, not like this." He turned to the priests. "Take it. Put it somewhere safe. Away from the city. We need to think." His voice cracked again. "We need to understand." The priests obeyed. The people whispered. The parade unraveled like a dream collapsing. And the ark stood still. But in the silence, in a space unseen by human eyes, Uzzah opened his eyes. The grass beneath him shimmered. The trees bent toward him like old friends. The wind felt warmer, alive somehow, as if it knew him by name. He sat up slowly, looked around. Everything glowed with soft, golden light. Not like fire, not like the ark's burn. This was gentler, deeper, like sunlight filtered through mercy. He stood whole, clean, light, and yet aware. He turned, and there it was, the ark. Still golden, still powerful, but no longer on a cart, no longer surrounded by people, just him. And it. He took a step forward, then stopped. "I touched it," he said quietly. "I touched what I wasn't supposed to." His voice didn't echo, but somehow it was heard. Not with ears, but with the soul, and then words. Not thunder, not scolding. Just a whisper, deep and wide and holy. "You meant to protect it, but I never asked you to." Uzzah's head lowered. "But I was afraid it would fall." "I never fall." Tears welled in his eyes. "I didn't want to lose you." "You didn't. But I had to show the world that holiness is not a thing to steady with human hands." Uzzah fell to his knees. He wasn't afraid anymore, just quiet, just still. He placed his hands on the glowing grass. "I understand now." The whisper returned, closer this time, almost like it smiled. "That's why I brought you here." The grass beneath Uzzah's hands shimmered like sunlight on water. He stood slowly, breath catching in his throat. The air didn't feel like air. It felt like peace. Every breeze was a question answered before it was asked. There were no walls, no throne, no fire, or gates, or choirs of angels, but Uzzah knew. He wasn't on earth anymore. He was somewhere between judgment and mercy, and he had been invited here. He took a few steps forward. The ground didn't crunch. It sang. Like the very soil was glad to be touched by clean feet. Then he saw them. Figures. Distant at first, shapes moving gently among tall trees that sparkled with golden fruit. They weren't like him. Not quite. Taller. Brighter. Their movements smooth as wind. They weren't looking at him, but somehow they saw him. He walked toward the nearest one, hesitant. "Excuse me," he said. His voice didn't sound like his own. It was clearer, honest. "Where am I?" The figure turned. It had no name, no face he could describe, but it was kindness wrapped in light. "You are in the place between," it said, "where understanding begins." Uzzah blinked. "So I died?" "Yes." "And I'm not in trouble?" The figure tilted its head, amused. "Do you feel like you're in trouble?" He looked around. Everything glowed softly. The light didn't burn. It comforted. There were no chains, no thunder, no angry voices. "No," he admitted, "but I disobeyed. I touched the ark." "You did," the figure said. Uzzah swallowed hard. "So why does this place feel gentle?" "Because judgment," the figure said, "was already written into the moment. But so was love." Uzzah stared at his hands. He could still feel the gold from the ark, not the burn, but the weight. Not physical weight, but spiritual. "I thought I was protecting it," he whispered. "I know," the figure replied. "You were trying to guard the presence of God, forgetting that God does not need guarding." He looked down again. "So I was wrong?" The figure stepped closer. "You were off course, not lost. You were sincere, but obedience is not about sincerity. It's about trust." Uzzah nodded slowly. Then, for the first time in what felt like days or minutes, he couldn't tell, he smiled. Not because he was right, but because he was still seen, still held, still loved. "Would you like to see what happened next?" the figure asked. Uzzah hesitated. "On earth?" The figure nodded. "Yes, the moment after." Uzzah's heart twisted. Part of him wanted to look away, to run from it. The other part, stronger now, wanted to know, not for pride, not for control, but for peace. "Yes," he said softly. "Show me." The figure raised one hand, and the golden grass shifted like pages turning. Suddenly, the world below opened before him, not beneath his feet, but around him, like stepping into a memory that still remembered him. He stood on a hill above Nacon's threshing floor. The ark was still. The crowd was scattered. Some cried. Others stood frozen. His brother, Ahio, sat on the ground, face buried in his hands. David stood nearby, his crown low on his brow, shoulders hunched as if the weight of the ark had fallen on him. Uzzah gasped. He stopped the parade." "Yes," said the figure beside him. The image shifted. Now David was pacing inside a stone chamber, his fists clenched. "Why would God do this?" he shouted. "Why punish someone trying to help?" A priest stood quietly in the corner. "Because we were doing a holy thing the wrong way." David's eyes burned. He didn't deserve to die. "No," the priest said gently. "But perhaps we all forgot who the ark belongs to." The scene blurred again. Now the ark sat in a stranger's home, a quiet hill country farm. "Obed-Edom," Uzzah whispered, recognizing the name. For 3 months the ark stayed there, no parades, no shouting, just reverence. The family prayed beside it, children sang near it, and God blessed them. The crops grew richer. The laughter returned to the house. Peace spread like oil on water. Then the vision shifted once more. David stood again, but this time changed. He wore a linen robe, no crown. His steps were careful. Behind him, priests, not servants, carried the ark on poles just as the law had commanded. Uzzah's eyes filled with tears. "He remembered," he said. "He learned." "Yes," the figure said, "and because he did, the people did." The music in the new parade was not wild, it was worship. The dancers weren't performing, they were rejoicing. The ark didn't wobble. It was held high, and no one dared to reach out and steady it. They didn't need to. They had remembered who held it steady in the first place. Uzzah turned slowly toward the figure. So, my death wasn't wasted? The figure smiled. Nothing in the hands of God ever is. The vision of earth faded, the golden fields returned, but Uzzah was no longer walking. He had sunk to his knees, hands folded over his chest, heart trembling with something heavier than fear. Not guilt, not regret. Something older, something deeper. He whispered, "I didn't mean to do it. I thought I was doing the right thing." The figure knelt beside him, its voice like music spoken softly. "We know." Uzzah looked up, eyes wet. "So what happens to someone like me?" "What do you mean?" the figure asked. "I died in the middle of a mistake. There was no time to repent, no time to fix it, no final prayer, just—" He gestured to the sky. "Gone." The question hung there. Raw, honest. And the answer came, not like thunder, but like water touching dry ground. Grace does not wait for perfect endings. Uzzah blinked. "But the rules, I broke them." "Yes," said the figure gently, "and the consequences came. But grace came too. It always does, even in the middle." Uzzah swallowed. "So I'm not lost?" The figure tilted its head. "Child of dust," it said, "if you were lost, you would not be here." A long silence followed. Not the awkward kind, the holy kind. The kind that lets truth sink all the way in. Uzzah breathed slowly. He had spent his whole life trying to protect something sacred, never realizing he was sacred too. That the God he feared also loved him. Not because he was flawless, but because he belonged. "You were not punished to be erased," the figure said. "You were remembered. To remind." "To remind who?" Uzzah asked. "The kings," said the figure. "The priests. The people. And maybe the world. That even good intentions must bow to holy instruction. That no hand is strong enough to hold God, but every heart is welcome to kneel before him." Uzzah sat still, light dancing in his tear-filled eyes. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said again. The figure nodded. "And now," it replied, "you will learn what it means to live with the right one." "Come," said the figure. Its voice carried more than sound. It carried peace that reached through Uzzah's bones. He stood and followed, though the ground didn't feel like ground anymore. It felt like walking on memory, on meaning, on something alive and older than time. They passed through tall trees with leaves like glass and bark that shimmered with writing he couldn't read. Each step whispered with wonder. There were no walls, no doors. But suddenly, the air changed. Softer, holier. They entered a clearing, and there it was. Not the ark, but what the ark had pointed to all along, a throne. Not gold, not stone, not anything human hands could shape. It was light, and it moved like water, and it pulsed like a heart. It didn't sit still, it breathed. Uzzah stopped walking. He couldn't go any farther. His knees buckled. His chest felt both full and empty at once. He whispered, What is this?" The figure beside him answered quietly, "This is what the ark was only a shadow of." Uzzah trembled. All his life he had feared touching what was sacred. Now he stood in front of what made that sacred thing possible in the first place. "Is that Him? The figure didn't answer with words, but Uzzah already knew. He fell to his face, not because he was told to, but because his heart could no longer stand on its own. Tears poured freely, not out of shame, out of awe. "This is what I tried to steady," he whispered. The figure spoke gently. "And this is what steadied you." A warm wind blew across his back, but it wasn't wind. It was a presence. It didn't shout. It didn't strike. It surrounded him like a father wrapping his arms around a broken child. "You were never holding me," said a voice deeper than music, deeper than oceans. "I was always holding you." Uzzah's tears became laughter, not loud, just joyful. The kind of laugh that escapes from a heart finally set free. The light dimmed gently, not fading, just shifting. Like it knew Uzzah had seen what he needed to see. The figure beside him gestured again. "One more place," it said. "One more thing to show you." Uzzah followed, his steps softer now. Not because he was afraid, but because something in him had finally bowed. They reached a quiet pool of water, perfectly still, no ripples, no breeze. But when the figure extended its hand, the surface shimmered and came alive. "Look," it said. Uzzah leaned forward. At first he saw only hills, then rooftops, then people in the streets. It wasn't a vision of the past, it was far beyond his lifetime. Children in a stone courtyard sat cross-legged around a teacher. The teacher opened a scroll. Today's lesson, the Ark of the Covenant. He spoke gently. "We treat holy things as holy, not because God is fragile, but because we are." The children nodded. One of them raised a hand. "Is that why Uzzah died?" Uzzah's breath caught. The teacher paused, then nodded. "Yes." Uzzah reached for the ark when he shouldn't have. But he wasn't forgotten. His story helped remind a king and a nation that obedience matters. That God isn't something we carry, He carries us. The scene shifted again. A young priest in training stood beside a replica of the ark in the temple courtyard, reciting his vows. "I will not serve by instinct alone," he whispered, "but with reverence." Another ripple. Now a scroll being copied by candlelight. The name Uzzah, written carefully in black ink. Not erased, not mocked, recorded. Uzzah turned to the figure beside him. "They remembered me?" The figure nodded. "They remembered what you touched, and they remembered why." "I thought I ruined everything," Uzzah whispered. "No," the figure said. "You reminded them of what they were about to forget." Uzzah turned back to the pool, and this time he didn't cry. He smiled. It wasn't the smile of a proud man. It was the smile of someone who finally believed he still mattered. Even in the middle of the mistake, even after the fall, even now. The vision faded from the pool. The water stilled. The world around Uzzah settled again into golden hush. He stood quietly, staring at his own reflection in the pool now. Not broken, not burning, just there. Whole. The figure beside him said nothing for a long while. Then finally, it asked a question, not loud, not commanding, just soft and clear. "Would you like to stay?" Uzzah blinked. "Stay?" "Yes." "In this place?" "Yes," the figure said again. "Here, there's no time, no wait. No fear of getting it wrong. You are remembered. You are known. You are loved." Uzzah looked around. The peace was deep, honest. Every breath felt like freedom. He turned toward the trees. The glowing throne in the distance still pulsed like a living flame. The wind smelled like praise. But then he asked, "Is there another way?" The figure looked at him gently. "You may rest, or you may serve." "Serve?" Uzzah asked. "There are others who walk in shame," the figure replied. "Others who believe one mistake is the end of their story. Others who forget that holiness isn't there to scare them, it's there to shape them." The air grew still again. "You could go to them," the figure continued, "not in flesh, not in form, but in echo, in memory, in truth." Uzzah was quiet. He looked down at his hands, once trembling, once guilty, now open, now free. He closed them slowly and whispered, "Yes." The figure smiled. "There is a boy who will read your name tonight," it said, "in the margins of a scroll. His heart is heavy. He thinks he has ruined everything. You will be there when he wonders if he still matters." Uzzah took a breath. "I'd like that," he said. "You'll never be seen," the figure warned. "I don't need to be," Uzzah answered. "I just want someone to know it's not too late to learn." The golden wind rose gently, wrapping around him like a cloak. And Uzzah disappeared into it. Not erased, released. The candle was almost out. The boy leaned closer to the parchment, his eyes heavy, but his heart awake. He sat cross-legged on the floor of a small stone room, scrolls piled around him like fallen leaves. His name was Eliab, 13, a priest's son, curious, clumsy, hopeful, haunted. He had dropped a sacred lamp earlier that morning, shattered it across the temple steps. The priests didn't yell, but he saw it in their eyes. Shame. Now he was studying late, alone, chasing a question he couldn't name. He unrolled the next scroll, Chronicles of the Ark. He read slowly, his lips moving with each word. Then he saw it. Uzzah reached out and touched the Ark of God, and he died there beside it. Eliab froze. His breath caught in his throat. That name, Uzzah. He whispered it. Why would someone die for just touching it? He looked around the room as if the walls might answer. He kept reading. He read about David's fear, the halt of the parade, the months of silence, and then the return, the reverence, the blessing. And suddenly he saw it, not just the mistake, but the meaning. Uzzah didn't die because he hated God. He died because the people had forgotten how holy God was. Eliab swallowed hard, and something strange happened. The air around him shifted, warm, still. A peace fell in the room like a quiet song, though there was no sound. He closed his eyes, and he heard something, not a voice, more like a thought that didn't come from him. Your mistake is not the end of you. His eyes opened slowly. The shame he carried from the broken lamp didn't vanish, but it changed shape. It didn't crush him anymore. It humbled him. He stood, walked over to the shelf, and picked up a broom. Not to clean, to begin again. The stars were out again. But this time, they didn't watch from above. They watched from within. In the temple courtyard, Eliab swept the last of the broken lamp's glass into a small clay dish. The night was silent. The wind curled around the columns like a gentle guardian, and far, far beyond the visible world, Uzzah watched too. Not with eyes, not with flesh, but with something higher, something whole. He no longer walked the golden fields. He no longer stood beside the ark. Now he traveled in the spaces where memory becomes mercy, where God uses stories as seeds. He stood beside other boys who doubted. He whispered hope into the hearts of young priests with shaking hands. He lingered near the edge of campfires, scrolls, prayers, and broken dreams. Not to speak, but to remind. And every time someone remembered his name, not in mockery, not in fear, but with understanding, he felt the breath of God pass through him like light through stained glass. He was no longer the man who made a mistake. He was the man whose mistake became a message. And one day, long after kingdoms fell, long after names like David and Solomon were etched in stone, a child in a dusty corner of a future temple would ask, "Who was Uzzah?" And someone would smile gently and say, "He was the one who tried to steady what only God could carry." And that child would pause and bow. Just a little lower. Just a little longer. Because even dust, once touched by God, is never ordinary again.